So at this time, and before we hand things over to Laura, for those who do not know Laura, Laura King is the public education representative for NFPA in Canada, helping fire departments from coast to coast to coast to coast in developing outreach programs. Laura is or was the editor of Firefighter Canada and Canadian Firefighters magazine for over 10 years before moving to NFPA in 2017. It's hard to believe that it's 4 years now, Laura, that you've been there. Laura was a reporter and editor for more than 20 years for newspapers and publications across Canada and the US, covering business, legal matters, politics, sports, and municipal affairs. Laura has an honors degree in journalism, political science, and public administration from Carleton University. Laura is certified to 1035 fire and life safety educator and a certified road to mental readiness instructor, and holds several other certifications. Laura lives in Oakville, but is from Nova Scotia and misses her home province greatly. So without any further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Laura.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Kevin. You can all hear correctly, correct? Yes? Okay, good. Thank you. I never know with the headphones. So thanks very much, Kevin and Shannon in the background, and of course the OAFE. I love your new shirts. They look awesome for hosting and organizing today's workshop. And thank you to all of you for your time. As Kevin said, we're booked for 90 minutes. I will not go over 90 minutes and potentially will be slightly under 90 minutes, but we've got lots of time for questions and discussions built in to today's presentation. So I'm going to warn you that there is a ton of information in this presentation, and I am going to do a lot of talking. There are transition slides between each section, so I'll stop at each one and ask Shannon to relay any questions from the chat to break things up a bit. Like I say, we're scheduled for 90 minutes, so settle in. Okay, so I'm hoping that everyone is familiar with the desk reference and has downloaded a copy of the 2020 version, which is really the 2021 version because it came out in February. We were a little behind because of COVID and people working from home and all kinds of stuff that was going on. And we wanted to make sure we did a very thorough job with all of the submissions that were received for this edition of the desk reference. So if you haven't downloaded it, and if you don't have it with you and you'd like to follow along on another screen, if you go to nfpa.org under public education, you will see educational messaging. The desk reference is there and you can download it and carry on with us. Okay, so a little bit of background first, actually, sorry. Today, what are we going to do? We are going to, you will become familiar with the new chapters that Kevin mentioned. Pardon me, you will know how and where to access the document. I will walk you through it, even though we've just said it verbally. You will learn the new messages and learn about the new messages. And if there's time, understand how to customize messages to reach target audience. You all know that. I'll just walk you through a little bit of what NFPA has to say and do on those issues, again, if there's time. So just before we go into all of that, a word about fireworks. Even though people use fireworks, they are so inherently dangerous, according to NFPA, that there is no responsible way to promote the safe use of fireworks or consumer fireworks, family fireworks, as we call them. So NFPA maintains that consumer fireworks are dangerous and therefore will not promote a false safe use message. So we don't have messaging on fireworks in the desk reference at all. There is a tip sheet on fireworks under public education tip sheets, and essentially it says don't use fireworks, they're really dangerous, and these are all the bad things that can happen. So you can use that tip sheet. I mean, we're coming up to May 4 and then July 1st, so you can use that tip sheet as a resource for your department to use in your social media and whatnot, but you will not find messaging about fireworks in here. And I say that at the beginning because every time we do this, we're asked about it. So why is this desk reference so important? Why do we at NFPA put so much emphasis on consistent, accurate messaging? Well, many of you have met Andrea Vastas, who is the Director of Public Education at NFPA, and we did this for our network representatives a couple of weeks ago, and she came up with this example. So let's take COVID messaging, for example. Consider the misinformation surrounding COVID, right? So that it's caused by 5G, that it was created in a lab by Bill Gates, that the vaccine contains a microchip, or that the vaccine causes all kinds of other issues and problems and so on and so forth. So, you know, misinformation, rumors and innuendo, as Andrea likes to say, we want to make sure that our messaging and the messaging that is being put out all across North America is accurate and consistent. So the desk reference provides fire and life safety educators with consistency, accuracy, and the competency, because you understand the context behind the messages, because we provide them in the document, so your audience can have trust in your programming. So it gives us all the credibility that we need to encourage people to change or modify their behavior. And that's asking a lot of people. So they need to trust us. And that's what the document is all about. So consistent, having trouble with that word today, consistent, accurate, and science-based messages are what you will find in the document. So how do we do that? We get input from our EMAC committee. So I'm going to try not to say the word EMAC too much. We used to call this document the EMAC. It's really called the desk reference. The EMAC is the committee, the Educational Messages Advisory Committee, EMAC, and that committee creates the messages. So there is input from the committee and others. The messages are developed and reviewed by committee members. They're checked against our codes and standards. We get this all the time. How do you develop the messages? Well, the messages are, the topic areas are submitted, people ask for changes and for new messaging, and then we go through this extensive process that takes months and months. They're reviewed by our national partners. So when we go through the messages today, I'll indicate where our partners have come in and provided recommendations on certain messages. And we do research on topics that need additional consideration. So if someone makes a suggestion or a recommendation and NFPA itself doesn't have the research to back it, we either go find the research or we put that message on pause and we do the research until we're confident that the message is accurate and based on science. And then the messages in the document are for you guys. They are not meant for the general public to absorb until you take them and customize them for your audience. So who contributes to the desk reference? People and organizations that are part of the committee by submission to the committee. Anyone can submit. There will be a form on our website starting in June to start making submissions for the next edition, which will be 2022, and hopefully will not get delayed like this one did until 2023. So anyone is able to do that. So if you, as we're going through this and as you memorize and take the new desk reference to heart, if you see things you don't like, let us know. If you think there's something missing, let us know. If you don't like the way something's worded, and that's important. If you don't like the way something is worded, please let us know. That is critical to making sure that the messages work for our audience, which is you guys. So who contributes to all of this? Fire departments, of course. Burn nurses and burn programs, pardon me, the US Fire Administration, Safe Kids Worldwide, the US Consumer Product Safety Commission, Underwriters Laboratories, Electrical Safety Foundation International, all of our NFPA engineers and our staff, and anybody else who would wish to make a submission. So again, it's for educators. The educational messages provide the foundational knowledge that fire and life safety educators should have when working with the public. And the messages will help you prepare for your presentations, develop your tip sheets, create your lesson plans and whatnot. And I know you all use them, use those messages, and we appreciate that. So again, always there's a technical review before the messages are adopted, and based on the codes and standards, and our research foundation plays a huge role in all of this. Okay. So that's kind of the background. And this is our team. This is the Educational Messaging Advisory Committee, or the EMAC. So these people are the EMAC, and you can see that they are from all kinds of reputable organizations. And then what's missing? What do you see that's not there? There is no Canadian representation on the committee at this point. So many of you will know that Bev Gilbert with the OFM, formerly with the OFM, chaired this committee for quite some time. And then I think Bev left the committee just as I was coming into NFPA. And that, I don't know if that position was not filled or that position was filled by somebody else. And there, anyway, regardless, there's no Canadian on the committee. So I actually had a lengthy conversation with the person to whom I report yesterday about exactly that as we were going through this presentation for him to do in California. And we were talking about something that will come up later about the way that we refer to barbecues. And in this document, you will see them referred to as gas grills. And here, well, some of us in Ontario have natural gas barbecues, but pretty much the rest of the country, that is not the case. So the wording is important, and having Canadian representation is important. So we're on top of it. And when we can do that, we will let you know. I don't know if there's a limit on the number of people on the committee. I don't think that that's the case. So we're working on that, and hopefully we'll rectify that fairly soon. Okay, so what happens next after the EMAC committee does their thing and the desk reference comes out? What happens next? There is a huge ripple effect. So we at NFPA are working on revising all the tip sheets to make sure that the tip sheets align with the desk reference messaging and vice versa. All of our infographics, same thing. Our presentations, so many of our presentations use the messages, but they need to be updated. Our toolkits, our community toolkits that are on our public education page, and our lesson plans. So it's a big lift when we do the revisions to the document to make sure that everything is consistent. So that's where we are. Okay. All right. So NFPA educational messaging. There are 3 new chapters. I know that Kevin said 2, and technically 2 is correct: pet fire safety and youth fire setter. However, we are promoting chapter 5, fire safety away from home, as a new chapter. The contents of that chapter used to be dispersed throughout, see, there's the Nova Scotia, throughout the document, and now we've combined them into one chapter to make everything a little bit easier to find and make a little more sense to you. So anything that is highlighted in blue in the document is new. The version that you will download today, or that you have downloaded, does not indicate that chapter 5 is new. We're fixing that so that it makes more sense. And then this is a snapshot of the chapter layout for you. And then down here, you'll see the messaging, pardon me, for children, preschool and grade 1, and easy to read messaging. That messaging has been there always. It was originally, or even in the last edition, it was listed as an appendix, and people tended not to go there because it was an appendix. So we've just listed them now as sections 2 and section 3 to encourage people to go there. So messaging there hasn't changed. It's just better organized for your use. Okay, so a little bit more. These messages are developed for educators, and we want you to do a couple of things when you embrace the desk reference, which is review the entire section first to understand the subject, rather than just plucking a message out without the context. The messages are built on each other to frame the topic, so it's important to have that frame of reference to read and understand the previous messages in the section. And then, as many of you have heard me say so often, we want you to use these core messages and customize them for your particular target audiences. Some messages are 2 or 3 sentences long, or 20 sentences long, and you can't fit them into a tweet, for example, but you can create your own tweet based on the core message and still be accurate and consistent. Okay, so I know you've all downloaded it, or hope you have, but just in case there's some of you who didn't and you want to know how to get there, if other than having the direct link, you would go to nfpa.org, of course. You would hover your mouse over public education, and under teaching tools, you will see educational messaging, and then you go here to download it. And I think I've mentioned this to many of you before, but there are little tricks with nfpa.org. So if you were to type in nfpa.org/EMAC, it will take you directly to there. So if you're looking for a code or a standard and you type in the number of the standard, it will take you directly to that. If you're looking for something on nfpa.org about coronavirus and you type in nfpa.org/coronavirus, it will take you there. So that's a great shortcut. All right, so one little thing that's new, and you've probably figured it out already, when you do go to download this, you will come to this new page. NFPA, like everyone else on the planet, is requiring your email address to do that. You can put in an email address that you never use, you can put in your work one, whatever it is, but that is the new thing at NFPA for pretty much all of our resources. The resources are still very much free. We're just asking for that email address, and if you leave these fields blank down here, you will not receive emails. And we're pretty good, actually. We don't spam. We really only send you what you ask for and what you want. So that's just a caution. All right. Any questions to that point, Shannon?
Nothing yet.
That's good. Okay. Anybody have a question they want to ask before I dive into the new messages and the new chapters. If you do, feel free, go ahead, and Shannon can interrupt, wave her hands, or do a little dance there. All right, so fire safety away from home, chapter 5, the first new chapter that's not really listed as a new chapter. Okay, so you will see here that this includes several sections and several subsections, all of which were in the previous document. It's just, again, we've grouped them so they're easy for you to find, and particularly relevant, of course, as we slide into what should be an interesting summer of people staying fairly close to home. However, still lots of things going on. And if you look at motorhome, camper, and recreation vehicle safety, for example, this is something that people are doing more and more of. Woman I work with in the States literally just sold her home and is going to live in her RV all summer. So we want to make sure that people are doing the right things, smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms and whatnot. So really good messaging to put out there. And the highlight here, the new messaging in this chapter is the first one you see here, 5.1.1, which talks about carbon monoxide alarms in hotels and motels. We are much better equipped in Canada, of course, than they are and have been in the States. CO is a big deal there now. I think we've surpassed all of that. But the interesting part here about some versions of carbon monoxide alarms are available for travel. So does anybody else travel with their smoke and CO alarms? Yeah, exactly. So good information to have. And this is what the rest of this chapter looks like. So under hotels and motels, you're going to see all of this information. Again, this is not new. I'm just reviewing it for you so you know what's there. And I think that this chapter is particularly useful for you at this time of year. There is a hotel and motel safety tip sheet. The tip sheet will be updated with the message that I just showed you about carbon monoxide. So again, that's part of what we're all doing, is updating those tip sheets and with that message to make sure that that's on all of them. Okay, so that is the first one. So take note. All right, we move on. Still with chapter 5. So peer-to-peer hospitality. This is a tip sheet that we developed probably 2 years ago now. It is really dense, as you can see. As you can see, there's lots of messaging on it, but we felt that that was pretty important given that there were, there are probably more now, specific regulations for Airbnb's peer-to-peer hospitality regarding smoke alarm safety and whatnot. So it's pretty dense. So we did not have that messaging from the tip sheet in the desk reference itself. So now the desk reference includes that section and it aligns with the tip sheet. So the messaging there is all consistent. Okay. All right, still in chapter 5, the motorhome safety. This tip sheet has existed for a while, but all of the information wasn't in the desk reference. So here it all is, and again, all in one chapter and easy for you to find. Okay, and I think that these are, again, these are great and good to put out over the summer as people start to travel despite our lockdowns and whatnot. Okay. And then safety in places of public assembly. We had this tip sheet, but we did not have the information in the desk reference. So it's all there now in chapter 5.4. Sorry, I keep doing that. Chapter 5.4. Okay. So not that we're assembling in places these days, but we will be, right? And the last two in chapter 5 are car fire safety and then what to do if your car is on fire. And you all know this is something that we don't talk about very much in public education, but it's critical because it happens all the time and people don't know what to do. So a good reminder and something that you may consider adding to your public education efforts, and then how to prevent a car fire, which is pretty basic information, but again, something that you could do a campaign around with all of the messaging that's there and the tip sheets. Okay. All right. Any questions? That just allows me to take a sip of water if I ask, Shannon.
No questions yet.
Perfect. Just means we're explaining it so well. All righty, so chapter 23, pet fire safety. You should have questions about this because I did. So new chapter, very much in demand. We get asked all the time about pet fire safety. And if you think back to This Is Us and Jack running in to get the dog and all that stuff, that kicked it off and it hasn't died down since. So we had the tip sheet and we did not have the information in the desk reference. So it is there now. And these, of course, are some of the tips that exist on the tip sheet. I've just highlighted them here for you. Build an evacuation kit for your pets. We have the information over here on the tip sheet about wildfire evacuation and being prepared. Right now, we're very big on wildfire evacuation information and being prepared. Some of the things, you know, like crate your dog or to crate your animal if there is a wildfire advisory rather than an evacuation order, so that you're ready to go at a moment's notice, and so that animals are easily able to be controlled and transported and whatnot. And if you remember back to Slave Lake and Fort McMurray, and people had to leave without their animals, people weren't prepared, and what that caused afterwards. You remember volunteers going around getting into homes and feeding the animals and getting them outside and whatnot. So that's a big issue. And again, we get tons and tons of requests. So we've done what we can with what we have. We still encourage people, and our tip is never go back inside for pets in a fire. Tell firefighters if your pet is trapped. So it's still very much when the smoke alarm sounds, get out and stay out. People do go looking for their pets. This is what we want to encourage, right? So that's that. All right. And then the next chapter that's new is Youth Fire Setter. Also very, very much in demand. You all know that it's in 1035. Some of you have taken it and have more experience in it than we do at NFPA. And our take on it for the last number of years has been that USFA has the Youth Fire Setter program, and we at NFPA aren't trained behavioral experts. So that's not sort of a service that we offer, but the tip sheet did exist, so we thought we best put the information also in the desk reference. So these are the items that you'll find in the desk reference that align now with the tip sheet. So at least there is some information that you as educators can provide to parents and guardians and caregivers from that perspective, and know that you're providing consistent information. Okay. So on those sections, any specific questions, anything about pets, not that I'm positive I can answer, or on the Youth Fire Setter? Okay, I just don't want to breeze through and then find at the end there's 50 questions.
So far, nothing in the
That's
chat.
okay.
If anybody does have questions, throw them in the chat. And like Laura said, there are the transition slides, so we can always, oh, question,
Of course,
John.
it's John.
With the current hoarding of car gasoline in the USA, oh my gosh, have you seen the pictures? Is there any new
we don't have new
messages?
It's wild. We had a discussion about it yesterday, the regional directors across the state. So I think they're working on something that they can try to put out. I mean, other than there are tip sheets about flammable liquids, which you'll see as we go through this. And I think that, you know, that messaging is already there. We just have to put it out in a way that targets the audience that's doing those things. So that messaging already exists. It just was never intended for this purpose, for people hoarding gas and filling up the backs of their trucks and filling, did you see the one with the shopping bag? What grocery bag, really? So the messaging's there. You under flammable liquids and storage of flammable liquids, and then of course we have the standard as well. But I think that there will likely be something coming out in a blog, John, that will then link to the messages. So not new messaging, but probably something we should all do. Yeah, crazy, eh? Crazy. Thanks. Okay. Oh, sorry. The other items that come up in the new section of the desk reference for Youth Fire Setter. All right, so we move on to the new messages, and there are dozens and dozens of new messages. So here we go, smoke alarms. So in this section, the smoke alarm tip sheet that we have now that you're all familiar with does not explain the difference between ionization and photoelectric alarms or address multi-criteria alarms. And I have to say, I'm not overly familiar with the multi-criteria alarms yet. I haven't seen them or experienced them in use, but they are coming. So the new messaging, which you can see here, and I know these are a little bit fuzzy, try to get perfect screenshots is challenging. So the new messaging explains the differences, and then we've kept in 1.2.7, which is install smoke alarms away from the kitchen to prevent nuisance alarms. They should be at least 3 meters away from a cooking appliance. So you'll see the difference here, the ionization and the photoelectric, and then the indication that the new multi-criteria alarm technology will say on the package, it helps to reduce cooking nuisance alarms. So that's something that we want to encourage, particularly in older dwellings where the units might have been installed in the kitchen and they're too close to the appliance. So I also wanted to show you in conjunction with that, you can go to smokealarms.ul.org, and we partner NFPA with UL, and they have some pretty cool videos and resources about smoke alarms, nuisance alarms, and the new multi-criteria alarms. This is all free to use and download. Our logo, I think, is on some of the things, some of the resources, but not all, and that's fine, doesn't matter. And UL's logo is certainly there. But again, fine, doesn't matter. I'm not sure the consumer cares where the resource comes from as long as it's accurate. There are some really cute, funny videos that explain all of this. And again, free to download and free to use. And I think I have one more here to show you. No, this one down here, sorry, this is the first responder toolbox at smokealarms.ul.org, and there is everything there you can imagine, and for holidays and long weekends and whatnot. So make good use of that resource. It's all there for you, and again, free to download. So they have more capacity than NFPA in some circumstances, so are able to do these kinds of things, and again, work with us and use the desk reference messaging, and are a member of our EMAC committee, as you saw. So a lot of people are not aware that that exists and that it's out there, and also think it's very American. It's not, it's completely generic. So certainly usable for all of you guys. All right, so chapter 2, don't worry, I'm not going through every chapter, just the new messages. So chapter 2, home fire sprinklers. So you may know that I'm heavily involved with the Home Fire Sprinkler Coalition here in Canada. I'm going to show you a couple of things about that in a moment, but certainly very keen to educate people about the benefits of home fire sprinklers. So therefore, we've added 2.2.2 into this section on home fire sprinklers, which says here, fire sprinklers automatically respond to a fire while it's still small, controlling the spread of deadly heat, flames, and toxic smoke. So the point of that message is that sprinklers continue to be misunderstood, very misunderstood by many people, and this clarification will help them understand how sprinklers save lives. In the States, they have legislation that ban sprinklers in certain jurisdictions. So they are fighting quite a battle. We don't have such legislation here. It's not quite as challenging and difficult, but that's why that message is in there. And that is new messaging that will migrate its way onto the tip sheet as well. So just, again, I wanted to provide you with some resources that go along with all of this. So next week, as you may know, is Home Fire Sprinkler Week in Canada and the United States. We, Home Fire Sprinkler Coalition Canada, have our first ever, our inaugural Sprinkler Symposium, say it 10 times fast, on Monday. Many of you, some of you have registered for it. If you haven't, you can do so through homefiresprinklercanada.ca. It's just a couple of hours, lots of good information for very short presentations, panel discussion, that kind of thing. And also here at homefiresprinklercanada.ca, you can go and download all of these resources for next week, again at no charge, and use them in your social media. This just went up this week, so we're a bit behind the 8 ball, and I know lots of departments have social media plans well in advance and not 4 days in advance, but if you have your own social media handles and are able to use these next week, that would be fantastic. And you just kind of join the party and get the momentum going and whatnot. So that is terrific. And then these are just a couple of posts about our Sprinkler Symposium and Sprinkler Week next week. So join us on that journey if you would like to. Shannon, any questions?
We do have a question from Tim, unrelated to the new chapters, but is there a plan to add high-rise fire safety to the desk reference?
I believe we have a tip sheet on high-rise fire safety, and I believe it's in there. You'd think I would know. You think I would know this by heart. So let me make a note of that and come back to it. I don't think I have the tip sheet in this presentation because the messaging hasn't changed, Tim, in relation to that, but I will find it for you and make sure that I get it to you. And if there's time at the end, I'll actually open up the desk reference and grab it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
because I think, yeah, there isn't an actual chapter on high rise.
Yeah, I don't think that it's a chapter. It would be sort of under home escape, if I recall correctly. And then there is a tip, there is a tip sheet for sure. Yeah, thanks. Again, you think I know so much to remember. Okay, thanks, Shannon. Carbon monoxide. So we, again, in Canada, a little bit ahead of where they are in the United States with carbon monoxide and mandatory alarms. However, we have added a couple of new sections here. So this is Chapter 3, 3.1.2 and 3.2.2. We're explaining here that carbon monoxide poisoning can result from things other than an idling vehicle in the garage. So that's just a wording change to be more clear. And then this message over here about installing and maintaining carbon monoxide alarms inside your home will provide early warning and reduce risk. The wording on that threw me a little bit because it doesn't specify what the early warning is. And there was lots of back and forth in our EMAC meetings about that. And some people claiming that they don't actually provide early warning because by the time the alarm goes off, there's actually carbon monoxide in the air. So that's what the committee decided on. I need to do a little bit more exploration with the committee members about why that's worded exactly the way it is. So sorry, I don't have that for you, but just interesting to note. Okay. And then still with carbon monoxide, so we're inside the home, 2 new messages and some clarity here about having things inspected. And then this one came from the committee again, when before using the fireplace, open the damper for proper ventilation. And this was added: when finished, leave the damper open until the fire is completely extinguished to prevent smoke and gases generated by embers. So apparently there were many findings of people having closed the damper before the fire was completely out, and then that causing issues. So again, lots of clarity and lots of specifics in the messaging. Okay. And of course, we have the carbon monoxide safety tip sheet, and that is on the website. But then we have the Canadian version of the tip sheet as well, which is on the website under tools and resources for Canadian departments or Canadian educational resources. And that just removes the data and the stats that are in the US version. So, and the spelling, of course, is Canadianized as our measurements, right? Okay. All right, and generator safety. So really important change in the messaging here. We have lots of summer storms and whatnot in Ontario, and although we don't need generators as much to keep us warm, people like to still have them and use them. So this has changed from at least 5 feet to 20 feet. So the distance has changed. Again, it used to be 5, now it's 20. And this change was from the Consumer Product Safety Council research, and it has also been updated in NFPA codes and standards. So new messaging there, and then just some basic new messaging as well about buying a generator, making sure it's listed, and then where not to stand around a generator and inhale the exhaust. So that information will be transferred to the tip sheet, and the tip sheet will be updated on the website. Okay, any questions on that and the change? Okay, good, thanks. Okay, boating and marinas. So we had the tip sheet for boating and marina safety, but we didn't have the information in the carbon monoxide section, and we didn't have anything about carbon monoxide. So this comes from, or is the result of people becoming ill while swimming at marinas or behind boats and not understanding what was happening while boats were idling and they were being exposed to the carbon monoxide. So that is why it's put in this section, and the whole thing is new, and it's pretty, again, basic information, but things that we don't think about and things that we probably don't put out a lot to our audiences. So will be a good focus for us over the summer and making sure that these messages get out. And while all this is being updated and all the tip sheets are being updated, our public affairs people are also working on press releases and social media posts to go along with all of this new messaging. And as you can see, there's tons of it. So, okay. Chapter 4, home fire escape, not escape, as people tend to say, and makes me laugh. So home fire escape, we have the escape planning tip sheet, and there are 2 new sections here that we will obviously update on the tip sheet. This is around security bars. It's just a change in the wording, not a tip that I've ever used in my communication, but some people were very not forceful, but really wanted this message and really wanted it to be accurate, because in some communities where they're doing their public education, it's an issue. And then this next one, pardon me, I just wanted to show you here that the tip sheets are available in multiple languages. And of course, the tip sheets for certain things that are basic, like smoke alarms and home fire escape, are also available in pictograph form. And then I wanted to highlight for you, let's see if it comes up, 2 things here. Make sure everyone in your home knows how to call 911 on your local emergency number from a cell phone or a trusted neighbor's phone. So the trusted neighbor is new messaging that came from a public affairs press release that was done several months ago and then brought to the EMAC, the committee, to consider, and was adopted by the committee. Simply because lots of people don't have cell phones, lots of people don't have phones, and lots of children have been in situations where they're running out of a house, or a parent becomes ill and they need to run out somewhere to make the phone call. So that information was added. Excuse me. And then, boy, that's bad, sorry, pardon me. And then just so you know, just so you know, the word cell phone will become, just a moment, guys. Okay, sorry about that. The word cell phone is should be mobile phone throughout, and that's just, we just missed that one. So we're using the word mobile phone just to be consistent and accurate throughout. Okay, so I found that interesting about the trusted neighbor's phone. I think it's good information, particularly when you're working with children who, again, maybe outside, maybe in a situation where a parent isn't right there. I had a situation here in Oakville several years ago, and you may have heard the story of Cameron, who came home from school and realized that there was a fire in the basement and ran outside. He was 8 or 9 at the time, and it's several years ago, did not have a cell phone, ran outside and couldn't find a neighbor who was home. It knocked on 3 or 4 doors before he found somebody, but he knew, because the Oakville Fire Department taught him to go to a neighbor's house if necessary, if the parents weren't around, which they were on their way home from work. So anyway, it's good messaging and I like it. Okay, so again, sections that lots of people have asked for, and Ken, I think you're on the call here today, or maybe was on the list, but have had multiple requests for information about how to communicate with people who have are deaf or hard of hearing, are blind, or have physical disabilities, and physical challenges. So we've added all of these sections to help you with that. We had the tip sheets, but we didn't have the information in the document itself, in the desk reference. So the messages are from the tip sheets. They're not new messages in terms of NFPA, but they're new messages in terms of the desk reference itself. So pardon me, for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, or have hearing loss, the associations that support these folks have given us the wording to use for the titles. Some like deaf or hard of hearing, some like deaf or have hearing loss. So you'll see them both. And you are familiar with these messages, again, from the tip sheet, and now they're reflected in the desk reference because they are so specific to the folks to whom we need to get these messages. So bedside alert devices, smoke alarms with strobes, have the home fire escape drill included, who will wake up a child or an adult who is deaf or hard of hearing. people need more time, so we need to make sure that they plan and practice the escape. Smoke or loud noise or things that make it more difficult to get out of a home are going to have more of an impact on these folks. So we want to make sure that these messages get out there. And then sleeping with your mobile phone, correct, and hearing aids or implants close to your bed. So all messages that we're asked about all the time, and now we have it in the document and in several locations so you can find it. So in addition to that one, it's people who use a mobility device, same kind of messaging. And the critical component here is making sure that you plan and practice the escape and that there is a plan for people who may be challenged to get out on their own. So lots of good stuff there. Again, this incorporates the need for mobility devices such as canes or walkers or wheelchairs and scooters, and we need to make sure that those items are easily accessible. And the recommendations of having bedrooms on a ground floor, of course, which may seem obvious, but we know that over time, abilities may decline and disabilities may gradually deteriorate over time, and these messages need to be emphasized. So, you know, it's like when people are on a 5th floor of an apartment building and they're fine when they move in, but 20 years later, it may be more of a challenge. So what messages are we providing to those people? And it's all about planning and practicing and having a system in place. Okay, so we want them to have as much early warning as possible. And then further to that, people who are blind or have low vision, similarly, right, install the bedside alert device that responds to the sound of the smoke alarm. We all know about that. And people who are blind or have low vision may be disoriented when they can't hear the common household sounds that are used to navigate through the home over the continuous high decibel smoke alarm sound. So that's a mouthful. And again, these are messages that you would want to customize for your audience, but critical to this section, sleep with your glasses and mobile phone close to your bed, all right? Okay. And lastly, in that section, for people with multiple disabilities, and we're certainly going to encounter that, we want to protect people who are deaf or have hearing loss and other disability using the messages in this section. So you can either add or subtract to this group of messages, again, depending on your target audience. So it's a bit of an ask for you guys to put this all together, but we figured this was the best way to do it that made the most sense for very specific target audiences. Okay, so more tip sheets to follow on all of that. They're in development. I can't say in production because they're not quite in production yet. So any questions there, Shannon? It's a lot to digest.
John just put one in there. Actually, Jillian made a comment about we should probably be on top of that gasoline messaging because we all saw what happened with the toilet paper. And John just questioned, is there any USA data about an increase in fire fatalities during COVID? Is there a plan to incorporate any new messages specifically for COVID?
So new fire fatalities, John, specifically from cooking fires or just in general?
Sorry, Laura, just in general, I know the OFMEM cannot correlate exactly right now with the increase of fire fatalities due to COVID. I just want to know if there's been any research that you've heard about in the US.
Yeah, so we have our own research and we have numbers, but I don't know. Similarly, because we're still in, what are we, 14 months in, I don't think we have the data to show that, you know, that over the last year or the year before that the numbers have increased. Anecdotally, certainly we know they have, and that there were more fires over certain periods of time. And if you look at in Ontario, we had more fires when COVID sort of first started, and then Toronto did a campaign and we all got on top of it. And I think that they sort of evened off a bit. So the short answer is no. What we have been doing is putting out the information and the tips that we already have in relation to all of the things that we were seeing. So more cooking fires, more, and I guess really providing the advice that we've always provided, but making sure that it reached people, and we tweaked it a little bit. So you've got more people in your home, more people cooking. What do you need to do? Cooking safety, electrical safety in particular, everybody working from home, plugging things into outlets and overloading things. So although we don't have the data, we anecdotally know that those things were happening, and we're pushing that messaging out, and still are actually. So now we'll change it, right, to, you know, safe barbecuing and kids around pools and electrical outside and inside and all of that. So, you know, we never have the data quickly, I guess, is the short answer. And the messaging hasn't changed. We're just doing more of it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think he's good.
Okay. I can't say anything else, Shannon?
That was it so far.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. Give me a chance to get my voice back. All right, so we move on to cooking. Chapter 8, cooking. So, which is already a fairly intense chapter with lots of information. I just finished redoing the cooking safety tip sheet, so that's good. And I've tried to change actually the image here. So this is a pot on a gas stove. And what we do know from our data and research is that far more cooking fires happen on electric stoves, electric cooktops, than on gas stoves. And we had some interesting conversations around why that is. Well, first of all, there are probably more electric ranges because they're in a more affordable price range, and in most apartments and subsidized housing, you're not going to, you're less likely to find gas stoves. So that would correlate and seem to make sense. So that's one of the things we've done with that. And then the new messaging here in this first section is, or the third section, the first two sections are exactly the same as the 2018 edition. The new message: keep things that can catch fire away from heat sources. Never use your oven or microwave as storage space. This can cause a fire. Seems really logical to us. I was looking at a house a couple of weeks ago, and I opened the oven, which is a lovely gas oven, and there were 4 frying pans in it, and they were not cast iron frying pans with cast iron handles. They were regular frying pans with handles, soft handles that could burn. And I thought, holy moly, it does happen. People do these things. So that is something that was added at the behest of the committee, because this is something that people keep seeing. I was a bit surprised about the microwave, but that's a very specific message. Storing things in the microwave, you would have to take it out before you put something in, but apparently people might turn on the microwave and use it as a timer, and it still goes on with something in it. So crazy, but that's information that is new and has now been included in the tip sheet, although it's not out yet, but we're in that process of updating it. So keep things that can catch fire away from heat sources. Never use your microwave oven as storage space. This can cause a fire. So messaging that we need to get out there. Still with chapter 8, what to do if you have a cooking fire. So new messaging, all new messaging. We've added some specific new messaging here. So we had some, you know, keep a lid nearby. We all know that if a small grease fire starts in a pan, we know that one off by heart. So here's a couple of things that are new. Only trained adults should use a fire extinguisher on a grease fire. We know this is a bit controversial. Only Class K fire extinguishers are rated for the purposes of putting out grease and animal fires. We have lots of feedback on this, and some people disagree with us, and they encourage people to use fire extinguishers on grease fires. Our experience, or at least that of our research foundation, is that in more cases than not, either the fire spreads as a result of someone using, an extinguisher, or there is injury caused by fire coming back on the person. So that is an NFPA recommendation and an NFPA message, and you guys can choose whether that is something you support. And these are the 2 fact sheets that are on the website about fire extinguishers and the types of fire extinguishers. So that's the issue, is that only the Class K are rated for putting out grease fires, and that's what it comes down to for NFPA. And then some information on what to do when you have an oven fire, a stove fire, which I think is great because that wasn't there before. And then, of course, the when in doubt, just get out and close the door behind you, and then call 911 or the fire department from a mobile phone or a trusted neighbor's phone. So you will see that messaging interspersed throughout the desk reference. Okay. I told you there was a lot, right? And still, so these are my electric stovetop coils. some messaging about equipment safety and what to do if you need to replace those coils. So consider temperature limiting appliance to prevent cooking fires. So I don't see a lot of those temperature limiting appliances or replacement burners in stores in Canada. I've checked, they're hard to find. That's messaging that the committee wanted included because they do exist, but they are difficult to find. And then 2 new messages that are simple and obvious. Check the cords and put the equipment where it won't get bumped or knocked over. So the wording of the messages, I think you all know or are fairly aware that they're worded at a grade 6 reading level. So some of them may seem quite simplistic to you, but that's the goal of the committee always. Okay, so now we come to gas grills. So as I said, no Canadian participation on the committee. So what was once propane is now gas grills. And so for us, if you're looking for barbecue safety about propane or gas barbecues, this is where you would go. So it's in Chapter 8 under cooking, and it's gas grills. And we have the tip sheet there, of course. And this section used to be titled propane grills, but everything else stayed the same, and it applies to both propane and gas. So the messaging was always there. It's just that the title has changed. So if you went looking for propane or barbecue, you might not find it. So I wanted to raise that for you so that you're aware. Okay. All right. And then turkey fryers. So many of you have met my colleague, Kelly Ransdell from South Carolina, and Kelly and her folks are big on these. So there is new messaging around this. We've always recommended against the use of turkey fryers. And now there's some new messaging. So if you see down here, NFPA urges those who prefer fried turkey, I've not had fried turkey, to purchase from a professional establishment such as grocery stores, specialty food retailers, and restaurants. So that's new. Or consider a new type of turkey fryer that has been listed by a qualified testing laboratory, including infrared fryers, air fryers, and electric turkey fryers. Do not leave fryers unattended when in use. And this is what those new turkey fryers look like. Never seen one. I would like to try it, but have never seen one. So that is, you've all seen that video that we all put out around Thanksgiving about the turkey being put into the turkey that has some moisture in it being put into the hot oil and what happens, or as Kelly says, oil. Yeah. All right. Good. Okay. So any questions on the cooking stuff?
Nothing in the chat. I was actually going to ask about, you were talking about the cooking fires and the ovens and the messaging about that. I was going to ask about microwave ovens, but I noticed there's a whole new section on microwave ovens in here. And it's included in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good. Did I not include the whole new section on microwaves in there? No, I guess we didn't. Okay. So much. All right. Yes. So good safety tips. Okay. And then we move on to burns and scalds in the kitchen. Messaging that we've always had. We've just added a couple of things at the request and behest of our committee members. So never hold a child while you're cooking, drinking hot liquid, or carrying hot foods or liquids. And of course, you know, everybody goes to Starbucks, everybody goes to Tim's and gets their wonderful beverages, and we've obviously had an increase in young children being burned because people are holding their Tim's or their Starbucks or putting it down, and this happens. Similarly with the lids on the travel cups. And then one that we didn't think of, but again was brought to us by our partners: protect your feet from burns by wearing shoes when walking on hot pavement, obviously, or moving hot liquids or objects. So apparently this is an issue, and who doesn't cook in the kitchen in bare feet? I'm always in bare feet, and luckily that has never happened, but you can see how easily it could. So a caution to always wear shoes when you're cooking or around hot things. All right, so some new messaging there. Still with burns, so hot tap water and scald burns. So we've changed the recommendation here. It's still 120 degrees Fahrenheit or 49 degrees Celsius, or just below the medium setting. So that's a result of finding that people couldn't find the temperature listing on their water heaters. So just changing the wording so that it's more applicable to everyone and that we can use it consistently, and then talk about how to sit a child in a bathtub facing away from the tap so that there are no scalds or burns. Not some, scalds and burns, something we don't think of a lot in what we do, but certainly it's a part of NFPA's messaging. A lot of our injury prevention messaging was transferred over to Safe Kids, and I think in Canada it's Parachute, Steve Podworski, his organization, that does that, but we still do the scalds and burns and work very much with the Phoenix Society in the States and World Burn and whatnot. So still very much part of our messaging.
So Laura, there is a question going back to cooking. Is there anything on smoker safety?
Smokers. Not that I'm aware of, but there could be. Not that I'm aware of, but I will check and let you know. I don't think we have a tip sheet on smoker safety. There may be in the section on grills, something that relates to that, but I think that the messaging is probably the same in that it's, never leave things unattended, stay nearby, make sure there's nothing combustible around, that kind of thing. But I'll look it up just to be sure. Okay, because it's a big thing in Canada, smokers and the big green egg and all that stuff. Okay.
Yeah, just as smoker safety, propane and electric smokers are quite popular in our area.
Okay. I will check and make sure. I think and believe that it's sort of the messaging that we would use with other things like gas grills and propane barbecues and whatnot, and that we could customize it for people using smokers and find some photos to go with it and potentially create some social media cards around that. That's a really good idea, actually. Okay. Thank you, Shannon. Okay, so smokers and smoking. So smoking. Pardon me, lots of messaging around smoking that we've already had. Chapter 11 hasn't changed. We've added this message, which is 11.1.2. If you smoke, smoke outside. That's always been there, but because of the risk of wildfire, and we know that people are put their improperly discard their cigarette butts in plant pots, and we know what happens in those situations. So the addition to that message is make sure to extinguish cigarettes in an approved container. So I was not on the EMAC committee, right? And neither were Kelly and Meredith. But then when we see this message come back and it says, make sure to extinguish cigarettes in an approved container, the question is, what's an approved container? So we have other messaging about extinguishing cigarettes or other smoking material, because there is lots of other smoking material in deep ashtrays, sand, metal containers, or water, so a non-combustible container. So our advice back to the committee was to change this to a non-combustible container. So just as an FYI, because this is highlighted in the section, so you may want to consider that as part of your messaging or using it that way. Okay, so we'll update the tip sheet to go with that. All right. And then chapter 12, electrical. So there is a whole lot of new messaging in this electrical section. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but I will advise you that it is something you should go through in detail. I've gone through it in detail, but I'm not going to detail it all for you here today because it would take too long, and I am watching the time. Electrical is still one of the leading causes of fire and injury in Canada and the United States, but a section that, probably isn't that sexy, and we tend to focus on smoke alarms and escape planning and cigarettes and cooking. So maybe embrace this chapter and start to use it in what you do. And again, we're updating all the tip sheets that go with it. So we have several sections in the chapter. So fire, electrical safety inside the home, appliances, arc fault circuit interrupters, and surge protectors. And we will update the tip sheet to reflect all of that, and including updating this very old graphic. So those are 3 of the things that are new inside that 12.1 section. And then outside the home, also we'll update the tip sheet, and there are several new messages in this section. And most, this is all meant for homeowners, for people who are doing things outside their own homes. It's not meant for electricians. The electricians work from the codes anyway. So people who are going to be doing things around their home, the home handyman, that kind of thing. And one of the most important ones that you'll see throughout the whole electrical chapter. Keep ladders at least 10 feet away from overhead power lines, stay away from power lines and extension cords, and carrying long equipment like ladders horizontally to avoid overhead power line contact. Obviously an issue that comes up time and time again in many municipalities, and that people just don't think about when they're outside on the weekends doing their thing. Okay. Pools, hot tubs, and spas. So really good information here. And again, goes along with the electrical side of things. There are several new messages you'll see over here again about the carrying the long equipment, staying away from power lines and extension cords. So that has migrated its way into this section to make it more robust. We have had this section, pardon me, have had this messaging on the safety tip sheet, but not in the desk reference itself. So now it's all there. Good messaging for the summer. My neighbors right next door bought a hot tub this week, and they just put it right up against the fence. And I could hear it going last night, and I'm thinking, what could go wrong? What could go wrong? Yikes. Yeah, hence the look at the new house with the frying pans in the oven. So equipment safety, this is the result of injuries that have been reported to us from people using power tools incorrectly. It's a whole new section, and this comes from, just let me find the organization for you, which is the Electrical Safety Foundation International. I never get it right, so I wanted to make sure I was looking at it. The Electrical Safety Foundation International. So they worked with us very closely on all of this messaging. And so it comes from subject matter experts, okay? And then still marina and boating safety, which you saw earlier under the carbon monoxide section, because again, two different sets of safety messages, many still on the tip sheet being migrated into the desk reference. So about swimming and making sure the boat's well maintained, and then the electrical side of things as opposed to the carbon monoxide safety, which is in the other section. So again, a whole suite of tools and information for you for safety over the summer months. Anything on any of that, Shannon?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Okay, candles. So I like this chapter. This whole section is, much of this whole section is new. We had a section on candles, we've enhanced it, and this is in conjunction with the National Candle Association in the States, which is a trade association, and that was incredibly helpful with all of this and came to us with tips. So candles, as you know, people love to use candles inside the home, outside the home, on the patios and whatnot. And when I went to look for pictures of candles to use with another presentation, if you go Pinterest or Google Images or anything, you will see pictures of candles all clustered together to create that lovely ambiance and whatnot. And here's the recommendation: place burning candles at least 3 inches apart from one another to make sure they don't melt each other and create their own drafts, which will cause them to burn improperly, and then which results in a fire. So interesting information there that we didn't have before. And then this one, keep your hair and loose clothing away from the flame. We've just changed the wording there for a little more clarity and to keep it within our grade 6 reading level. So again, this tip sheet being updated, but that's not all. A whole new section on how to burn a candle safely. We know that folks are going to use candles. We recommend, of course, flameless candles, but because many people use candles in their homes for religious purposes, or particularly now that people are not gathering in churches or temples, people are doing this at home. And we know that what we want to do is recommend that they do it safely rather than not provide any recommendations at all. So a whole section on how to burn a candle safely, which includes trimming the wick to 1/4 inch, keeping the wax pool clear, how to light a candle properly. So that's a whole new section that, you know, people are going to use them outside too. Bigger candles, you see them in the hurricane lamps and whatnot. And I see backyards that are completely lit up by candles starting at this time of year. So good new information that is valuable. This is not on the tip sheets. We've added a couple of them on the tip sheet, but if we add some, we have to take others away. And what are the most critical components? So some decisions being made on that. And then a third new section, while the candle is burning, what you should do or what you shouldn't do. So never leave a candle unattended, which you're familiar with, and some others: keep out of the reach of pets, and never burn a candle at or near anything that can catch fire, of course. Okay. And then lastly, in this section was here before. It was originally called candle use in home worship. We didn't like the wording, so we've changed it to candles for religious or ceremonial use in the home. The section is the same, just the title has changed. But we had 2 fatalities here in Oakville a couple of years ago as a result of this. So information that I think is critical that we want to make sure is available to you. Okay. 2 more sections to go. There's outdoor burning and then there's batteries. And then we show you a couple of resources and we can ask questions and we will be done. So outdoor burning, my favorite section, because there were so many requests for this information, and we put it all together and enhanced this whole chapter on outdoor burning. So a whole section devoted to campfire safety. You're familiar with probably all the safety tips because they were on the campfire safety tip sheet, but they were not in the document. So the document, again, enhanced and updated to meet everything that we had already had and done. So this is great. We get, again, dozens and dozens of requests for that material. And pardon me, of course, as is always the case, the Canadianization is in there with the measurements. First message in each of these sections: before setting up a campfire, be sure it's allowed, check with your local fire officials. So that's in all the sections. And that is in the first section too, 16.1 on outdoor safety and outdoor burning. Always check with your local fire officials to see what the situation is and what the status is. So again, I'm in Oakville. We're allowed to have fires in the backyard. In Burlington right next door, they're not. And where's the dividing line there? Well, it's Burl Oak, but people don't know. And, do you need a permit? Do you not need a permit? It depends where you are. So good information. And then the fire pit safety, again, something that we've been asked about for a couple of years consistently. So this is a very robust section, all brand new, and it goes into a lot of good detail that you can share. We don't have a tip sheet specifically on fire pit safety. It's on the list, and I expect that you will see some social media cards come out from NFPA on this over the coming months. But as you can see, so many messages, right? And so much to do and so few people to do it. Still in that chapter, recreational fire use, new section, and this includes fire pots, chimeneas, sky lanterns, and patio torches. So lots of, again, requests for information on all of that. And then the information about gel fuel. And you'll recall last summer that the OFM put out that video that showed the dangers of replenishing the gel fuel lamps, which, we don't want to see, but we need to see and we need to share. And then the next section here is flammable liquids, and that includes more detail on those and what not to do. Okay, so there we go, the flammable liquids, and some storage information there, and then it goes to propane safety, which was back in the grilling section and the cooking section before. So this is where you find all of the information about propane. And then the last one here, oh, sorry, I'll just flip to this to show you and then go back, is the gel fuel safety. So a section specifically on gel fuel safety that talks about these specific utensils or items. So really good information to have again for the summer. And then I'll just flip back here. So the propane safety is here in this section newly, and then 2 things for you: the grilling safety tip sheet, and also UFSA has a great tip sheet. Uses imperial measurement, but it's free and it's all based on our messaging. So 2 resources there for you, plus OFS your really good barbecuing social media card that everybody uses and is really well done. Okay. All right. Questions on barbecue safety, flammable liquids, gel fuels, outdoor safety?
Nothing.
Perfect. And lastly, battery safety. So this tip sheet has been around for a while. We updated it with a message that I would never have thought of, which is remove the batteries from an e-cigarette before placing in a pocket or purse. So didn't know that, but probably some really good information. And then 2 other sections, 9-volt batteries. We had the tip sheet. We didn't have the information in the desk reference. We do now. We all know that storage of 9-volt batteries is an issue. So we want to make sure that people are aware of that. And then battery safety, battery disposal. So when we're encouraging people to test and change the batteries in their smoke alarms or replace their smoke alarms after they're 10 years old, we should also be telling them what to do with them because of the lithium ion batteries that are in the 10-year ones and the regular 9-volt batteries that are in the older ones. So this section takes that all into consideration. So more information for you to share, which I don't know if it makes it easier or harder. It just certainly makes it, gives you more detail and more information that you can use when you're asked questions. All right, so I'll stop there for another moment and take another drink of water. Shannon, anything or anybody, any questions just on all of that, the messages themselves, where to find them, why we organize things the way we did. And then we've got about 15 minutes to have a look at putting those messages into action and any other questions you may have.
So there's nothing in the chat, but the battery disposal one I think is interesting. Because I had our waste management people approach me a couple of years ago when we were doing our, change clocks, change the batteries messaging, and they wanted to partner up in terms of the proper disposal and that type of stuff. So I'm glad to see it in there.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think is a great idea. Work with within your own municipality to make sure that messaging gets out there clearly and accurately. And then what do you guys do with them when you do changes and when you replace smoke alarms in your own programs? So at least now the messaging is there.
So there's another question in here. Will e-bikes be added to the messaging?
E-bikes, because of the batteries.
And other mobility devices like scooters and wheelchairs?
Good question. Okay, I will make a note. Okay. Yeah, don't have that information. So thank you. It's a good question. And so the process by which the messages in the document are changed or revised. So it's a 2-year process. We do it review it every 2 years, but the committee is sort of ongoing. And now, as I think I said, that there will be a form that goes up on the website in June for the 2022 revisions and updates. It is quite a process. As you can see, we actually had to stop adding material because we were just running out of time to get it done. NFPA very much wanted information about hot work, so welding and whatnot, to be in the document, in the desk reference, and we just didn't have the capacity to get it in there. But this is what happens, right? So who would have thought, e-scooters, and that we should have messaging about e-scooters, something that we hadn't considered, although, you know what, there's lots of cities in the States that have them available on the street corners. So something I wouldn't have thought of, but everybody's correct that it probably should be included. So we'll make a note and we can put it in, and you guys can also go to that form. I'll let you know when it's available and submit potential messaging or changes or updates. And it doesn't have to be very specific. You can say there should be messaging on e-scooters and the batteries, and then the committee will take it from there. And nothing gets discarded. Everything is considered very thoroughly. Okay. Anything else, Shannon?
Sorry, just before you move on from that, the comment was there's also an issue with charging and parking them in seniors' buildings.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay.
Is it okay if I actually speak to you, Laura?
Absolutely.
I just was curious. I was looking at the sections on smoke alarms and CO alarms. And I noticed in the messaging that there's nothing about like just getting out when you hear these alarms. It talks about, they're all the same way, the installation, et cetera, but not what to do. Because that's a lot of the questioning I get, or people calling 911 and they're saying, well, what are we supposed to do? My alarm's going off or my CO alarm's going off, and they're all standing inside their house. Just wondering why that's not in there. I know there's different instances, it's cooking. We know it's cooking. So we can't just say the alarm goes off, get out all the time. There's some instances, but just something along those lines.
Yeah, very good question. So now I'm going to give away everything that I'm not supposed to give away for Fire Prevention Week, which I think I've kind of slid into our conversations before. So that's a very good point, and something that we are considering, and that does need to be more specific in the messaging. So for Fire Prevention Week this year, the theme will be announced on June 8th, but the theme is all about the sounds of the smoke alarm and knowing what to do when you hear the sound of the smoke alarm, and getting out and staying out, and getting out immediately and staying out. So when you hear a beep, it means get out and stay out. When you hear a chirp, it means take action. So I think that once that messaging is all settled down and developed, and our resources are developed to go with it, there will be, if there's not already, a proposal to make sure that that is the messaging that's also in the desk reference. Certainly we will say, if you hear the sound of the alarm, get out and stay out. That's learn not to burn messaging. So it must be in there somewhere under smoke alarms and home escape, but I don't have it in front of me. So there will be more messaging around that, and it will be much more clear during and after Fire Prevention Week. I know that's not a great answer, but but now you know what it is. So learn the sounds of fire, learn the sound of fire safety, learn the sounds of fire safety is the theme. And we're working on lots of resources that go with that. Does that help? Okay, thanks, Lee.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Shannon?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay, good. So I'll just go through a few things for you. So obviously you've seen all the new messages, or some of the new messages, lots of them, and how do you put those messages into action? You know that all of the materials that NFPA uses are based on the messages in the desk reference. So all of the tip sheets in multiple languages and Canadianized tip sheets, and of course the pictographs as well, and the easy to read tip sheets. So we take the messaging, and the messaging is used in all of our resources that are then able to be shared with you to download for free and use in your program. So learn not to burn, and remembering when, and all of our lesson plans, and all of our videos, and all of the information at sparky.org and sparkyschoolhouse.org is based on the messaging and does not diverge from the messaging. The only thing that we do, as you know, and as you've seen in all of this, is as things change and technology expands, we create new messaging in the interim, and that's where you'll see the tip sheets and the campaign for Fire Prevention Week, and then it goes into the next round of the desk reference. So the material is all there for you to use, pardon me, and we certainly want you to do that. And then from core to customize, so we call those messages in the document the core messages, and some of you again have seen that ABCs of educational messaging or effective educational messaging workshop and presentation, where we encourage you to take that messaging and customize it for your target audiences and create that customized call to action, thinking about who your target audience is, what behavior are you trying to change using the core messages, what you want to modify or change, and then what delivery methods you're going to use. So how do you take the message that is, yay long in the document and make it into 3 or 4 words in a tweet or in a video or whatever? You guys have done a fabulous job, because we've all had to lately. And I know that you know all that. It's just a bit of a refresher for you that that's the purpose of the document and the purpose of the EMAC committee. So just to let you know about additional resources. So NFPA has all of our stuff, of course. USFA, again, an American organization, yes, but the resources that they provide, or that it provides, are generic. I don't think consumers, I don't think the people who follow us on Twitter, they know it comes from you. And then I don't think they pay attention to this stuff. I think that they're looking at the messages that are intended for them. So I don't mind using that stuff. I know you have to go through corporate comms and all that, but they can even take these and copy them and just remove those logos. So I always find with corporate communications, well, what do we do? What do we do? Well, here's the message, and here's something you can literally just copy it and put your own logo on it, and no one's going to say anything, because our mission and that of USFA and our other partners is to get the message out. It doesn't really matter to us how you do it, or if you, well, how you do it correctly and consistently, but it doesn't matter if you take something that we've done and make it your own. So there is no offense taken if that's the case. Anyway, UFSA uses all of our messaging and is heavily involved with the development of the messaging. So feel free to use that. And if you are not aware of this digital media library at the USFA website, which, it has dozens and dozens of social media cards for just about everything that we do. I see them all the time on social from Canadian and US fire departments. So go for it. If you haven't explored that, by all means, go ahead. And two other places that have great information, Electrical Safety Foundation International, they use our messaging, we use their input. So there are some cards there that are available. And then of course, what we do through our social media messaging is available to you to beg, borrow, choose, amend, change, whatever. So if you watch us and follow us, Sparky the Fire Dog is the handle and is the platform through which we do the public education messaging. But if you also follow NFPA written out on Facebook and at NFPA on Twitter, then you will find out what else is going on and what other things NFPA is doing around not only public education, but codes and standards as well. And that, my friends, and very patient people, is it. And open to any further questions and anything you might want to add or complain about or ask that we do or suggest for the document itself. And again, there's always an opportunity for you to have input into the messaging and the document that will be available starting in June for next year.
So just a couple comments in the chat. Tim just made mention to the USFA that they have the simple pictographs that they use for the ESL and newcomers. And I know 100% I've used them as well. They're awesome.
Yeah.
And the other question, will the presentation be recorded and shared with the slide deck? So yes, we are recording. Laura, I don't know if you're able to share the slide deck or if that's an NFPA thing.
Yeah, we don't share the slide decks because so much changes and we all customize them for each specific audience. So you can absolutely, the video is fine, the recording is fine, but I can't share the slide deck with you. If there's something specific you want, I can share a couple of slides and provide other resources to you. So if anybody says, oh, I'd like to show the cooking stuff to my, the rest of my educators or whatever it is, we can do that. If you want to invite other people to come and do a shorter session on all of that, I'm happy to do that for you. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments out there? So you can either throw them in the chat or just unmute in the 3 minutes that we have left.
Hey, that was good timing. I slowed it down and tried not to speak so quickly. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you certainly did cover a lot of material. You weren't lying about that. And I'm glad to see you weren't tongue-tied like I was this morning and were able to get through it. So that's awesome. So I don't see any other questions popping up at this time. So on behalf of the OAFE, I'd like to thank Laura for approaching us with the opportunity to collaborate and introduce the updated desk reference, the document to all the public educators and fire prevention officers across the province. We know how important this role that this desktop plays for NFPA. And so thank you, Laura. And as Laura indicated, this desktop reference is a great resource for the fire service to use base messaging for and to complement it with other resources as well. And just to let everybody know that OAFE resources are available that could complement many of the messages found within the desktop book on the member side of our website. So please don't hesitate to jump on those either. So again, thank you, Laura, for the great presentation. It was a lot of information, a lot of resources for the fire services. And Shannon, also thank you to you for all your hard work behind the scenes. I hope everyone enjoyed the workshop. Take care, stay safe, and we'll all see you soon, hopefully in June. So take care, everyone. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Shannon. Thanks to all of you for hanging in there. And I will answer your questions. Yeah.